Welcome in, everyone. Hello, hello. We are back for another episode of Adventures in Business. I am Amani. This is our co-host, Mandy. How are we doing today?
Amani, I'm spectacular.
Yes.
I am spectacular. I'm sad a little bit because Browns lost again yesterday.
Okay. So you mentioned that.
Yes.
You know who the Browns play next?
I haven't even looked at the schedule. Are we playing your team?
They play Washington next.
We play the Commanders?
Yes.
Oh.
Would you like to make a friendly wager?
We should make a wager because we'll be together next week in Las Vegas.
We will. The game will be over by the time you arrive. I think when you leave, when you're leaving, the game will be over. But yes.
I strategically booked my ticket to leave after the game is over.
Good.
So yeah, I know.
So if the Browns win, what should I do? And if the Commanders win, what do you have to do?
Well, I already know what I would do for you.
Okay.
I think that I should find a pancake house in Las Vegas and buy you a gift certificate to it since you are madly in love with pancakes.
Okay. So that could work. If the Browns win, you can bring me a Browns shirt and I'll wear it during our next live broadcast.
Oh, Amani, I love that. Does it have to be just a shirt or can it be Browns paraphernalia?
It could be Browns paraphernalia, yes.
Okay. You're on. Should we handshake?
Yes, we should handshake. Okay.
You are on.
I love it.
Really quick, what happened in your weekend? Highlights, lowlights. What's a high low for your weekend?
It was a very chill weekend. Didn't do much. Yes, I didn't do much of anything this weekend. Just kind of prepared for this week and watching my team. They did really well yesterday, so that was exciting.
Who'd they play? The Commanders.
Arizona.
Amani's team's Commanders. Yeah.
They played Arizona, so they did well.
Good.
What else did I do? I went out to lunch with some friends. That was fun. Pretty chill weekend, I'm binge watching a show. I'm binge watching Dexter. So I've been watching that. So yes.
Amani, that show makes me weary of human beings. How are you watching it and not thinking everybody is a killer?
I mean, it just is what it is. I still give everyone the side eye anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But yes, So yeah, I watched a few episodes of that. Did I watch anything else? No, I don't think so. No. Yeah, I cooked some crab cakes. It's good because what happened is I ran out of Cracker Meal. So I had to race around to the stores to see if I could find some Cracker Meal. Couldn't find the right Cracker Meal, so I had to use breadcrumbs instead, which was fine. But I quickly placed the order for Cracker Meal on Amazon, so I have it next time. So I'm not SOL.
I've never made crab cakes before.
Ooh,
What do you
that's one of
Can
my
you tell me about
superpowers.
this is like your date?
Yeah, it's one of my
This is like
closers.
your
Yeah,
lady killer?
yes, yes. This is one
What
of
do
the
you
closers: the crab
what do
cakes
you
and the sweet potato pie.
what do
That's
you
it.
put what do you put it what do
I
you put
can't
in
tell
your
you
crab
that. I'll tell
cakes?
you that offline. I'm not putting that out there for all the people
Oh,
to see.
oh, too much competition out in
I
Vegas.
put crab meat. I put bread, cracker meal, mayonnaise, mustard, Old Bay seasoning, a little touch of salt. The most important part is actually the crab meat. So you have to get
Mhm.
like the really good crab meat. I get my crab meat. If I don't go back to DC area, Maryland, where I'm from, and bring it on the plane, well, I freeze it and bring it, check my luggage, I will order it from a place there that ships it to me next day, still
Ooh.
frozen. I'm serious. I'm very
Ooh.
serious. Yes.
Amani, I want crab cake. Okay, we're gonna coordinate this offline. I would like
Yes.
to have some Amani crab cakes.
Okay. We'll make that
And
happen.
I'm saying this, and I know Scooter would too. So we're gonna
Yes.
have to coordinate this because
Yes.
he's a crab cake man.
We'll make that happen. We can bring all the supplies to your home. We'll make that happen for sure.
Okay, I love it.
Yes.
We'll make it
Yes.
happen.
Yes.
All right.
Delicious.
Well, going back to us giving side eye and
Yes.
being skeptical of people or
Yes.
having a little anxiety about
Uh-huh.
things
Yes.
in life, should we introduce our guest?
We should. I cannot wait for this with all that we've been through the last 2 or 3 years. I'm so excited to speak. So go ahead, take it away. We'll get her on screen right now as you're introducing her. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, we have an amazing woman on this show today. She's the creator of the Center of Stress and Anxiety Management. She's a multi book author, a TEDx speaker, a psychologist, a mom, a wife, a fellow podcast host, Dr. Jill Stoddard. Welcome to
Yes.
the show,
So we give
Jill.
you a round of applause, although the applause might not appear, but we'll give you a round of applause in the show. So welcome to the show. We're excited to have you join us. I'm going to let Mandy start us off because I could ask you many, many questions for the How to Show. So we're going to go back and forth like tennis. Mandy, what's the first question you want to ask Dr. Stoddard? We'll call you Jill here, but
Definitely call me
officially,
Jill.
people, put some respect on her name. It's Dr. Jill Stoddard. So go ahead.
Uh, Jill, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for
Welcome.
having me, Mandy and Amani. It's
Yes,
great.
you're
You
welcome.
Now,
know, when
where
I binge watched Dexter, it was when Netflix still sent physical DVDs by mail.
Oh, yes, yes,
It's a good
yes.
one.
That's good.
It's a good one. Yeah.
Season 2, midway through season 2, yes.
So
Oh,
good.
snap. I want to know, well, first of all, thanks for being on the show. And I think we've got an anniversary. You just celebrated 1 year of your Imposter No More book. Is that right?
That's exactly right. September 19th, the book was 1 year old, and September 19th is also my wedding anniversary. So I
Okay,
celebrated 15 years of marriage on the same day, and I actually
okay.
have it tattooed.
Oh,
Can you see
nice.
that?
Oh,
919.
So, I know this is very cliche, but what's been the key to lasting 15 years in marriage?
Oh gosh. That's a great question. I think probably having a good sense of humor, and I think recognizing like it's not about whether you stumble into issues, but it's really about how you resolve them. You know what? I want to change that whole answer because really I credit Eve Rodsky with the fact that we have a great marriage because she has a system called fair play that is
Mm.
all about a fair division of labor at home. So with household stuff and with kid stuff if you have kids. And because I will be honest, in the early days we hit some bumps
Mm,
because we did not have an even distribution in the home. And then Eve taught us how to do that. And it has been smooth sailing since then. So that is what I would say.
interesting.
Yeah.
What,
It was a
okay,
game changer.
when you
Mhm.
divide up the duties, what were some of the duties that you had to take on that you initially did not want to take on?
Ooh, I
Well,
like this.
none, because I was doing all of the
Oh,
duties.
poor
And
guy.
so
Okay.
really it was, I mean, I was so
Poor
desperate. I
guy.
noticed. Yeah.
Poor girl.
I'm just
Poor
saying,
girl.
explain though. Keep going, and then I'll respond. This is going to be a spicy episode. Go
It
ahead.
is.
Well, it's funny. So I had Eve on my podcast, and I had her on a couple different times. And before her second appearance, I checked in with my husband to say, "How have you felt about all of this? Did you feel really put upon that you suddenly were doing more sort of chores than you were in the past? And he said, no, not at all. Because now it's like, I know what my jobs are and I do them and it's fine. And we're so much better because of it that it really was worth it. So he is just as much on board with the fair play system as I
Okay.
am.
Carry on,
Yeah.
Mandy. Okay.
I like
Mhm.
the fair play system. It's funny. I do have a couple questions, but I want to hang here for a second because I think, when my husband and I got together, we had already been living separately for so long. We were older, right? So
Yeah.
he had his own systems. I had my own. And I don't know, Jill, if this happened with you, but when we got together, I found myself taking everything on. And
Yeah.
I think, so I'm curious for you, I think it was because I grew up in the Midwest. That's what you did. The woman took care of everything and took care of the husband. But that was not very relevant in 2010 when we got together. But I think I modeled that behavior. So why did you take everything on, and was it some of that or was it something else?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it's just patriarchal culture, right? It's just sort of
Mm,
the roles that we kind of naturally fall into, not because we're naturally better or worse at anything, but because culturally that's just what we're taught to do without even realizing it. And then of course there's things that happen. I think, if you have kids, when kids are born, if you're breastfeeding, the mom has to do that, so there's the
mhm.
certain things that women tend to take on and it becomes I don't know, it sort of just takes on a life of its own and it can become very uneven. And, even in heterosexual relationships, the research shows even with men wanting to do more and doing more than they've ever done before, women are still doing 60 to 70%, even when they work outside the home, even when they're primary breadwinners. So I
Mhm.
think it's just sort of like baked into our culture and we have to like actively make choices to like flip the script and do things differently.
Yeah, I agree. That's something I've actively worked. And we are fair play all the way here in the Graziano house, but it's a chore to work on and to
Yeah.
let go and all that other stuff. So
Yeah.
I want to go to a place that you talk about a lot. You talk a lot about fraud to fearless. So what do you mean by this?
Well, so, what people think of as imposter syndrome is this feeling of phoniness that you're not as competent as other people think you are, that somehow you don't deserve the position that you're in. And any minute, everybody's going to figure it out. They're going to figure out you don't really know what you're doing, that you don't really belong in the position. And, so it's that feeling like I'm going to be outed as a fraud.
Mm,
And the fierce, like from fraud to fierce, is basically understanding that those feelings are completely normal. Like the research on this varies a lot, but I mean, the prevalence rates typically run between 40 to 70% in most studies. So that's most of us. And, so if most of us are experiencing this, let's first say it's not a syndrome, because that
mm,
would make it a disorder, a disease, a pathology, which of course, if everyone has it, it's just normal. Um, we also think that it's more common among people who have had experiences of marginalization. So, also, that means it's not a syndrome. And in fact, when this phenomenon was first identified, it was called the imposter phenomenon.
Mm.
That was the late
mm,
70s. And the two women who identified it, Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes, they thought it only affected high achieving women. So, isn't it interesting that a phenomenon that existed in like badass high achieving women, our culture immediately started calling it a syndrome, right? Like
mm.
pathologizing it. So there's like sexism baked in, like we're back to patriarchal culture issues. So I always ask people like, let's rebrand this imposter syndrome thing back to the imposter phenomenon or imposter experience, imposter thoughts and feelings, and recognize that it's normal. But even though it's normal, even though it comes from a place of, systemic or organizational kinds of influences, it doesn't mean that it's not helpful for us to learn skills and tools to be able to combat it so that it either doesn't hold us back. Because obviously we may miss opportunities if we let it stop us from taking on challenge. But what a lot of people do, and I bet you guys will recognize this, is they get on that like hamster wheel of achievement trying to outrun it. Like if I
Mm.
just do this one big
Mm.
thing, if this thing, that thing, this,
Mm.
then I'll feel legitimate. Then I'll feel like I'm not a fraud. And that simply doesn't happen.
Well,
And
so
so what I like
yeah.
yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, you go, go, go.
Well, I was gonna say like for me, what fierce means is that you're making conscious, deliberate choices about what you're saying no to, so that you're not letting the imposter thoughts get in the way, but also what you're saying yes to. So they're not causing you to, work to the point of burnout because you're trying so hard to outrun it.
Mhm.
I'm so glad you brought the part up about the achieving, and if I just achieve this, then I won't be an imposter anymore. And I know you cover a lot of this in your book, Imposter No More. But if people are listening or watching this right now and they're feeling this imposter phenomenon, what is a quick exercise or a quick tool without giving away all the secrets to the kingdom? But like, what is a quick exercise or tool they can do with themselves that might tamper that imposter phenomenon just a little bit?
Well, I think what it's really about is cultivating psychological flexibility. And what
Mm,
that means is it's our ability to be in this moment, aware of and open to all of our internal experiences. So what we're thinking, what we're emotionally feeling, what we're physically feeling, urges. So aware of those things, open to those things, and then making a conscious, deliberate choice to act or not act, like to do a thing or not do a thing, based on our deeply held values. So who we want to be, how we want to be, how we want to show up in the world. And in order to cultivate psychological flexibility, one of the most powerful things that we can learn to do to get better at is to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So we can now, like, I like to start this with some easy practices and then, of course, work our way up to the really hard stuff. But we can do this really quickly right now. If all of us, like, if you guys just fold your hands, and anyone watching or listening, fold your hands the way that feels comfortable and notice how it feels. And then switch your fingers so they're one off. So it's like the funny feeling way.
mhm.
And notice how that feels. And can you sit and open and allow? And I'll sometimes give people like a little mantra that you can like repeat in your head. This is uncomfortable, but it's just a feeling. It's not dangerous. It's temporary, and you can handle it. And
That's
and
good.
like we could sit like this all day, and there's thousands of different ways that people can do this. I like to start using people's senses. So this is tactile. You can do it with food. I don't make them, but in my practice, Bean Boozled jelly beans together, which are like, it might be pomegranate flavor and it might be an old dirty bandage. And it's all this like just trying to like build these willingness muscles. And if you think about how many choices you make because you don't want to feel a certain thing or you're trying to feel a certain thing, and think about how much your life would be different if that didn't get to be in charge.
Yeah, that's a great exercise. I love
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just kind of continue with imposter syndrome. What's like, I don't say treatment, but how do you advise people when you constantly see them in a state of worry? They're worried about their health. They're worried about getting older. They're worried about being alone. They're worried about their next promotion. What kind of advice do you share, or how do you help them through that state, which can be
Yeah.
another hamster wheel?
It definitely can be another hamster wheel, or I think of it as a treadmill where you're
Mm.
working really hard but not getting anywhere new, right? That like it's a
Hmm.
lot of
Mhm.
work to engage in all that worry, but it doesn't really get you anywhere. And I mean, so there's a couple different things. One is I like to really normalize this, that like we were literally designed to worry. So if you think about, early humans coming out of their cave, and maybe there's like a vague figure in the distance and they're not really sure what it is, and maybe it's a bear, maybe it's a blueberry bush, they don't really know. If you're a worrier, if you think, I think it might be a bear, I don't really want to take my chances, I'm going to go back into my cave, better to be safe than sorry, and it was really a blueberry bush, then you miss breakfast, right? But if you're like, oh, it's fine, I'll take my chances, and you go and it's a bear, then you become breakfast.
Hmm.
Mm.
And so if you think about, the fittest who survived, those who were more likely to play it safe, who worried about what might be up around the corner, who avoided uncertainty and ambiguity, or tried to, worrying often is trying to like solve a problem in your brain, often before it happens, but that's part of what the function is. And this is just what our brains are designed to do. Like if I said to you guys, okay, let's see, what does this bottle cap and this, what is this? These AirPods, like, what do these two things have in common? Watch what your brain does.
Mm.
It's coming up with an answer as we speak. And I literally just picked up two completely arbitrary objects off my desk. And I've had people reach out to me days after I've done a talk and will use this exercise. And they're like, I'm still trying to figure out what the pencil sharpener and the book have in common. and that's exactly the point, is our brains don't like to quit until we can solve a problem back on the treadmill. And because if you can figure out whether that was a bear or a blueberry bush, not only are you not become breakfast, but you also don't miss breakfast because you can, figure out how to get back out and eat. So we are evolutionarily designed to be cautious, to worry. And so that's kind of the first thing, is like really normalizing that this has a purpose. It doesn't mean that you're broken in some way because you worry. The second piece would be really understanding, like, what are you doing or not doing when this shows up? And what function does that serve? And really, what function does the worry serve? Because often the worry is meant to prevent catastrophe, to give a person a sense of control, a sense of certainty. And because everything we do or don't do, it works, or we wouldn't do it, right? We all know procrastination isn't good for us, but the minute you give yourself permission to put off a dreaded task, what do you get? Relief, right? Now, the next day you have the same amount to do and less time to do it. So it doesn't work in the long term, but it works in the short term. The same is true of worrying. It gives us something in the moment. So being able to identify what that function is. And if this behavior has no cost, then there's nothing that needs to be done. But if it has a cost, then the alternative would be understanding, like, what is this worry getting me and what can I do instead? And what that usually ends up boiling down to is getting comfortable being uncomfortable. Because usually whatever behavior we're engaging in, whether it's procrastination or worry or whatever else, it's that we're trying to feel better. We're trying to get some relief. We're trying to get some sense of control, some certainty, because we're unwilling to feel the discomfort that comes with the uncertainty, with not trying to solve a problem, with not thinking through every single catastrophe that there is. And so if you can learn to be with those feelings and not have to do the thing, then you've created a lot of new opportunities.
It's kind of like using like worry as a superpower.
Kind of. You could see it that way. Yeah.
So if we continue then, so you have worrying. Now, what is your opinion on like how the effect of social media on our mental states just in general, and then how that really causes us to compare with each other, which can lead you down an even further rabbit hole?
Yes. Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think there are a lot of benefits to social media. I don't think it's all evil. We certainly do connect in some ways. We're doing this, getting, my mission is to get ideas about psychological flexibility out to people who maybe don't want to go to therapy or don't have the resources for therapy. And social media is one way to allow that. But the comparison, I think, is really where it becomes harmful. But here's another example of something we are literally designed to do. So think about this. Think back to like the cave people, early humans, a couple 100,000 years ago. We didn't have, and still don't, sharp fangs, sharp claws. We don't run at high speeds. We had each other. And we know that early humans who hunted and gathered and traveled together had a survival advantage. And so doesn't it make sense that you are going to constantly think, do I measure up? Am I adding value? Do they think that I'm good enough? So it's like that social comparison. And even that, are they going to find out that I'm a fraud, that I'm not holding my weight? Even the imposter thoughts and feelings, that stuff was baked into us a very, very, very long time ago. Because as long as you're making sure that you're doing your part, that you're adequate, then you're not getting kicked out of your tribe. If you get kicked out of your tribe, you're dead. And it may seem, what a lot of people will say is like, oh, but now technology, like evolution hasn't really caught up. But here's the thing. Contemporary research has found that there is like the most robust predictor of both our mental health and well-being and our physical health and well-being. Like we're talking morbidity and mortality. There is one factor that's the strongest predictor. Do you know what it is?
No.
It's the presence of quality relationships.
Yep.
So if you get kicked out of your group today, not just 200,000 years ago, today, and you are alone, you like loneliness has been found by current research to be more deadly than cigarette smoking.
Mm.
So our tendency to compare is another thing that is adaptive. And so I think having people really recognize that and then knowing like there is a line here, right? There is knowing that I really care deeply about other humans and about connecting and about, having a group and having relationships. That's important. And I'm going to nurture that. And I also notice when I'm getting sucked into a keeping up with the Joneses, they go on cooler vacations than me. And that's like not the thing we're talking about when it comes to what's good and healthy. And we have to be our own monitors for the impact that that's having.
Go ahead, Mandy. Otherwise, I'll keep going.
I know. Well, I have a quick question for you, Amani. When she held up the bottle cap and the AirPods, what was
Yes.
the thing that you thought? What do they have in common for you? What was the first thing that came to mind?
They're both white.
That's what I did. I had the
Yeah.
same thing.
That one was too easy.
Yeah.
That was too easy.
We'll do another
anyways,
one later.
a true confession. Since you had us fold our hands and
Yeah.
then switch our hands, what I did was I took my little house shoes off and I switched feet. So now
Yeah.
I'm sitting here with my shoes on the wrong feet through the episode to get uncomfortable with being
Great.
uncomfortable. I want to try it out because I like that experiment. Physically put yourself in an uncomfortable situation, then it makes being mentally uncomfortable a little bit easier. So anyways, I just wanted to give a
Exactly.
true confession really quick.
I love it.
Yeah.
A
So
plus.
I would thank you. Oh, and I love an A plus. So I want to hang more on this anxiety and stress management. So as specifically in the hospitality industry, a ton of people in our audience, they work for hotels or restaurants. They own hotels or restaurants. They're operators or salespeople. And it has been said that a job in the hospitality industry is one of the 5 most stressful jobs behind being a nurse, being a police officer. And so for people struggling to manage their stress and their anxiety, and I say anxiety loosely because we talked about this a lot on this show. I've been diagnosed by actual doctors with severe anxiety disorder. I'm not talking about that as much. That's a whole different topic. I'm talking about people that experience symptoms of anxiety or have stress management issues in the hospitality industry. So people out there are going through this right now. What can we do to disarm this a little bit more? Or if there's leaders out here that are listening that want to provide tools and resources for their employees, what can we do about this? Because it is a phenomenon right now.
Well, you're going to think I'm a broken record or like a one-trick pony because my answer to this is a little similar to what I've already said, because the first piece is recognizing the parts of this that are normal and baked in. But the reason I'm saying that specifically is, I'm going to give you a metaphor because I think that's going to make it click for people much more. Let's say I have a machine. It's kind of like a lie detector machine, but I hook you up to it and it can detect how stressed you are or anxious. Okay. And I say, as long as you don't get stressed or anxious, you'll be totally fine. But if you do get stressed or anxious, it's going to deliver a lethal shock and you're going to die. But just don't get stressed and you're going to be totally fine. What's going to happen?
You're going to die.
Yes, you're gonna die.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
You're going to die. And it's so it's not because the incentive isn't high enough, because we know our life is the biggest incentive that we have. But if you think about what this setup does to your relationship with stress, it makes you go, oh no, stress is terrible. It's dangerous. It's deadly. I can't have it. I can't have it. If I have it, I'm going to die. So now what are you stressed about?
Having stress.
Stress. So when you're stressed about stress, you're stressed. When you're anxious about anxiety, you're anxious. And so as long as you're like freaking out about the fact that you're stressed and anxious, you will always be stressed and anxious. So this is another place we're sort of recognizing stress, anxiety. These are just normal human emotions that people have. And if you are unwilling to have them, they will be set on high because now you're anxious about anxiety, you're stressed about stress. And so that ability to practice being with some discomfort, get comfortable
Mhm.
being uncomfortable, it allows emotions to do what they're meant to do. Now, most people say, oh, so if I'm willing to have it, then it'll go away. No, because to be human is to experience the full range of emotional experiences. But what will happen is it will ebb and flow and come and go, which is what all emotions do. But if you're unwilling to have it, it will be set on high. The other thing I would recommend is to watch Kelly McGonigal's amazing TED Talk about stress. She wrote a whole book, The Upside of Stress, but this is an 18-minute version if you don't want to read like a 400-page book. It's
Mhm.
one of the most popular TED Talks of all time, and you'll see why, because she talks about how um, part of what causes us to be stressed or causes the negative impacts of stress is the way that we label it as being problematic. And so she
Mm.
basically gives you an alternative way, like a way to change your relationship to stress so that it doesn't have the same level of negative impact. And one of those is when we feel stressed, not only does it release the cortisol, which is the hormone everybody thinks is going to kill them, but it actually also releases oxytocin, which is your tend and befriend hormone.
Hmm.
And that is your body's way of saying, you're stressed, you should reach out, because what's the most important thing? Relationships.
Relationships. Mhm.
Hmm.
And our bodies are designed to release oxytocin so that we find our people during times of stress and anxiety.
What's your
That's good.
answer? Very good. What's your answer or response in certain communities where therapy is looked upon very negatively? It's looked on as
Mm.
showing like weakness, particularly people of color. What's your message? Because I've run into numerous people who could benefit greatly from therapy, but they just look at it upon a sign of weakness. What's your message
Yeah.
to people like that community?
I mean, I think I would, I guess you answered the question. I was going to say, I would want to know what it is, because I think there are assumptions and preconceived notions about what therapy is like and what it's about. And I think in a lot of those communities, it's like, I don't want to air my dirty laundry to a stranger. Like culturally, that's just not what we do. And, most contemporary therapies, especially the ones that are evidence-based, are meant to be relatively short term, and they're often focused on present day skills and tools. So it's not a lot of like delving in way back into your childhood and talking about every painful thing that ever happened to you. And if that is something, you may want to do that eventually, but if that's the thing that's kind of getting in the way of doing something that could be incredibly beneficial, it doesn't have to look like that. So certain types of therapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy, the therapy that I do and live in my life and credit it for having an amazing, not pain-free, but amazing, fulfilling, meaningful life, is acceptance and commitment therapy.
Hmm.
And ACT as a therapy that's designed, you talk about what your values are, about what you want your life to look like, what kind of person you want to be, how you want to show up in the world. And then we look at what gets in the way of that, typically certain thoughts and feelings, and how to change your relationship to those thoughts and feelings so that they're no longer holding you back. And so, everyone that I've treated in therapy, the people who come sort of scared or intimidated or don't know what to expect, find this to be refreshingly like accessible and not intimidating and just not at all what they thought it was going to be. But they have to be willing to
Yeah.
tolerate the initial discomfort of the
Mhm.
Yeah.
uncertainty and the stigma. But I have like a lot of older people coming to therapy, and so I see the stigma changing.
Good. Yeah.
And I see more people of color. I see, people from older generations where that stigma has been more of a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. That's interesting because that's good. That's good. Now, kind of flipping the page or whatever, you also speak. So what's been the toughest thing you've had to go through personally to grow your speaking career? And how do you relate those lessons to your therapy practice?
Oh gosh. Well, Amani, that's a hard one to answer because I am right smack dab in the middle of trying to grow my
Hmm.
speaking career. I've done lots and lots of like webinars and workshops for mental health professionals, but right now, I mean, my goal for 2025 really is doing more like
Mm,
keynoting and corporate kind of talk. So maybe check back with me in a
mm,
year and
okay.
I'll let and I'll
Okay.
be better able to
We'll help you. We're on the same journey.
answer
We'll
that
help you
question.
with that. Yes, we'll help you with
Yeah,
that.
that would be great. That would be great. But I
Because
think, the thing that I had to get over to become the speaker I am today, which I think is a much better speaker today than I was many years ago, is a willingness to really show up authentically. I think the best talks are those that, I show up as a storyteller. And my goal is to create a transformative experience for the audience that's based in science, but that uses like really accessible everyday tools and skills. And, in order to do that, I think it's really important as a speaker to show up and be real and be vulnerable. And that means, telling stories on stage that for a long time I didn't talk to anybody about. And of course, once I was willing to do that, that is really when like the evaluations started to pop. I always got good evaluations, but they got really good once I was able to show up in that way. And I think that absolutely relates to therapy too, more that like, yes, I show up authentically, but I'm not really telling my sob stories in therapy, right? That's
Okay.
not really how that works. But I think what I'm doing is really encouraging my clients to be willing to show up authentically and vulnerably, because that's the same way that's how a speaker makes a connection with an audience.
Mhm,
That's how all of us as humans make connections with each other.
Mm.
mm,
I think I've seen you write a bit about acceptance and commitment, and you talk about goals and values. So,
Mm.
what, in your opinion, is the difference between goals and values, or how would you define goals and
Yeah.
values?
Well, they're related, but they're different. So a goal, we all know what a goal is. A goal is like a thing you can check off your to-do list. But a value is more a quality that you embody. So let's say, for example, it's like being a good mom is something that's important to me. So you could say parenting would be like a value domain. And then my goal or my action that might be kind of within that domain is, you know what, I'm going to have us start doing Sunday night dinner and game night as a way that we can connect, right? That's a goal. Like, oh, did I do that this week? Yes, check it off a list. But if I'm showing up to that, scrolling through social media on my phone, not being present, not paying attention, that's where the values are really missing. The values are the qualities you embody. So, am I going to show up and be present, loving, playful, kind, affectionate, whatever the qualities are that feel important to me as a mom in that particular context? Or like I like to shorthand it as the me I want to be.
mm,
Mm.
mm.
Or even better is the me I want to be in this one moment, because we only have the moment. And if you picture the word moment, the word me is right in the middle of it.
It
So like
is.
you can just get a visual of the word moment and a capital me, like who's the me I want to be in this moment? And that's values right there.
What about those times when you aren't the me you want to be and you know you're not being the me you want to be? How do you put in speed bumps for that and course correct?
Well, then you get to do the next right thing in the next moment,
Mm.
so if we're using that same example and I realize my phone is dinging and I'm getting my attention dragged, in the moment I realize it, I can put it down and I can also say, "Hey guys, I apologize. Like this is not how I want to show up to our family night." Or maybe I don't catch it until the next day. Or maybe I'm being really snappy and rude to everybody. And that's not how I want to show up to any of the humans in my life that I love. And so that might mean the next day I say, you know what? I was really tired and irritable last night and I did not show up the way I wanted to. I'm really sorry that I was snapping at you and I'm going to really try hard to do better next time. There's always a next present moment that you can choose to show up as the me you want to be. And we're going to fail constantly. We're
Yeah.
not perfect, that's
Mm.
okay. We're
Mhm.
works in progress.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah,
Or what do
we
my
are.
kids say? Progress, not perfection.
Yes, done
Or
is better than
practice
perfect.
makes
Yes.
progress.
Mm.
Yeah. What um what are your favorite books? Since you mentioned a really good TED Talk, what are your favorite books that you love
Mm.
to recommend to people that want to maybe improve their mindset or they work on getting through anxiety or imposter syndrome?
Well, I
Besides your
mean,
book.
I feel
Besides your
like
book.
I'm not supposed to recommend
Besides your
my
book.
own book.
Yes,
You
yes.
I mean,
should.
In addition to
I
your book.
well, I have a real bias. Like, I genuinely believe the best way to tackle this stuff is through cultivating psychological flexibility. It is an absolute game changer. And so really any book that is essentially an ACT book, an acceptance and commitment therapy book, that is aimed at whatever the struggle is a person is having, whether it's, so I have a book that's for anxiety, women with anxiety, although everybody says it's not really for women. And then psychological flexibility for imposter syndrome, imposterism. But there's lots of other great books. If you look, New Harbinger is a publisher that publishes a lot of ACT books by
Mhm.
great ACT writers and trainers. And so people can just kind of Google like acceptance and commitment therapy and couples or depression or relationships, and you can find
Now,
different ones.
many potential authors struggle with imposter syndrome primarily and anxiety in terms of getting the book finished. That is probably one of the most difficult things to do is to actually finish the book. How were you able to get through that and finish several books?
I yes, people struggle to finish books because they get the writer's block and all of that kind of stuff. But I actually think more people struggle to start the book. Because there's an actual statistic out there, and I should look it up because I don't remember what it is, but there's like 89% of people say that they want to write a book someday. It's a
Oh,
very high number. I
yes.
don't know what it
Mhm.
is, but only
Maybe,
like
yeah.
right? But only
Yes.
like 0.1% of people actually ever write a book. And that's where I think the anxiety, the self-doubt, the imposterism, like I think that's what gets in the way. And honestly, before I wrote my first book, there, there were acceptance and commitment therapy uses a lot of metaphor and experiential exercises, but you had to like find them in all these different books. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if you could just pull one book off a shelf and open it up to values and find a bunch of different ways you might help somebody figure out their values? And it didn't exist. And in that moment, I thought, well, maybe I should write that book. And boom, who do you think you are? You're not an author. You don't write books. You're
Yes.
not an ACT expert. And so it was really having to use my psychological flexibility skills to handle those thoughts and feelings, to be willing to move forward and do that book in the presence of all of those thoughts and feelings. And I think the mistake people make, and in my most recent book, I call this the gap trap, is they get trapped in stagnation, like not moving forward due to a perceived gap in confidence, skill, knowledge, experience, expertise, whatever it is. And they think they have to fill the gap before they can move forward. But of course, that's a trap. And really, you have to be willing to move forward, even in the presence of that stuff. And I think what's so important to realize, I know that's easier said than done, but if you think of it this way, like, think of the last time you were up at 2:00 in the morning with your wheels spinning, back to worry, right? Worry, worry, worry. And you think about what you were worrying about. It's like definitely not that Game of Thrones isn't coming back for another season. You're worrying about being competent at work, even if you love that show, being competent at work and the people you love and health and the world. You worry about the stuff you care about, right? Like, what we fear is what we hold most dear. So it is ridiculous to think that we should be able to move forward with writing a book or doing a TED Talk or anything else that you care about doing competently, or that you don't want people to call you out, you're not a real book author. Of course, that's going to be scary. And it's ridiculous to think you should be able to like fix that before you move forward. So, and that's what psychological flexibility is all about. It's that willingness to do what really matters to you and cultivate a big, bold life and career, even in the presence of fear and self-doubt and anxiety and imposter thoughts and feelings.
I think, Mandy, I think we should call this episode "Who Do You Think You Are?" Because
Who do you think you are?
that saying, I've heard that for my own self. Who do you think you are writing a book about being a DJ when you're not the best? Or who do you think you are about I mean, that saying is common. Who do you think you are? So I'm
Yeah.
glad you said that. We've come to the time in the show. The show's flying by.
Fly by. Yeah.
Where we flip the script and you can ask myself and Mandy any question you want. Nothing is off limits. So, who do you want to ask the question to first?
Oh, well, I'm going to ask you guys both the same question. So why don't I just
Yeah.
ask the question and then you can decide who wants to take it.
Very well.
Just hypothetically, no. So I told you guys that like
Asking for
where
a
I'm
friend.
at.
Asking for a friend.
Of course, I'm going to ask a question that I want the answer to. Well, so as I said, I'm like working to build the speaker side of my business. And even though earlier I said there are some, pro beneficial sides to social media, if I'm being honest, I really don't like it at all.
Agreed.
And I would prefer to never have to use it. Maybe not never, but and as an author, you guys have written books, you're expected to have a platform if you write books. And if you're marketing anything, you're supposed to be doing that on social media. And so my question for you is, if a person didn't want to rely on social media, maybe was only willing to do it as like a bottom of the list way of marketing, what are your other favorite, or what do you think are the most effective ways that people can market and brand if they weren't doing social media?
Okay. Maybe I go first. You go
You
next.
go first. No, you go first,
Okay.
Amani. Yeah.
Okay. So I would give you 3 ways. Number 1 is appearing on podcasts. Just talking about your book and what you're doing, appearing on podcasts. Just make it
Hold on,
consistent.
I'm going to take notes.
Oh, you're going to take notes. I got my little notebook right here.
Oh,
Appearing
so
on
many
podcasts.
notebooks. So many
Yes.
notebooks.
That would be 1. Number 2 would be creating some sort of lead magnet so you can just grow your email list. So when it comes time to do that, like I have my what R&B group are you? I think that's really good, like lead magnet, somewhere to kind of a quiz or something. And then number 3 would be what you're doing, just speaking in front of audience. It could be for free, it could be, for a smaller fee, and trying to spread the word that way, because then you'll get spinoff business and things like that. So those are my 3.
Love it.
Mandy, what additional items do you have that maybe I didn't share?
Well, I have a couple, and then I have a PSA. So, I mean, I would get out there and I would go to some face-to-face either meetups or networking that have nothing to do with your industry. So, people that might, like I just talked about the hospitality industry. We need more education on anxiety and stress management and how to deal with it. Maybe you go to a networking event for your local chapter of HSMAI, which is Hospitality Sales and Marketing Association International. Or maybe it is in the Boston, Maine area. Maybe it is a local chapter of MPI, the Meeting Professionals International. Maybe you get in touch with their education director and say, hey, I know this is a big issue. Imposter phenomenon is an issue in the hospitality industry. Can I speak at your education event? I would just physically get out there face to face in industries other than your own, because what you have to offer, it satisfied so many other industries, and they're looking for solutions, especially in those high pressure cooker. I mean, I don't know if it's in the medical industry, if it's in the emergency nurse, probably emergency nurse conference, or even the first responders. There's so much that. So I would focus on that. But then my PSA to you is my PSA I share with everybody. Nobody really likes social media, right? When you look at it as something you don't like, you're never going to like it. But here's the reality. We are in the attention economy. We used to be in the oil and gas economy. We used to be in all these different types of economy. Right now, the highest amount of attention is focused on social media. The power is in your pocket. So if you don't personally like it because you don't want to scroll or have comparison syndrome or whatever, hire somebody to do your social media for you. But if you are a speaker, if you are selling any service or product, if you're a business owner, you have to have an online presence, because there's a stat that just came out recently from Google that when people buy online, they look at a review 3 times or more before they buy. And think about it, whether you're buying a refrigerator or you're buying a trip to Zimbabwe or whatever it is, you're going on Yelp, you're going on, you're looking at a doctor, you're going on all these different things online. And if you are invisible online, you might as well be invisible in business. So I think, speaking of getting uncomfortable, being uncomfortable, You should
Ooh.
probably
Oh, I got to practice what I preach.
practice what you
Yes,
preach. Be
yes,
uncomfortable being
yes, queen.
uncomfortable in the
Yeah.
social media space. It's the fastest, freest way to deliver your message. And Jill, your message is so strong. Like you have so much good stuff to put out into the world. Yes, it should be monetized, but just for the pure virtue of giving people what they need, and people so desperately need your message. I would either hire somebody to get, to do it for you, to build some content for you, or just be like, okay, once a day, I'm going to be terribly uncomfortable. I'm going to post something once a day. And you don't have to do all the platforms, but I would pick a platform and just sit in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
Now,
Thanks.
Yeah.
Super
we,
helpful.
of course, we're going to take you back to Burlington, Vermont. We're going to
Oh
go back
boy.
to
Oh, snap. Let's get weird. Let's get weird.
21-year-old Jill. And we're going to sit down with her at the coffee shop. And we're going to ask Jill of now to give Jill of then advice based on everything you learned. What advice would you give your younger 21-year-old self?
Ooh. If I knew then what I know now, I would want to tell myself to start being myself, being my authentic self, like to drop the people pleasing, to not say yes to everything under the sun. Like I would tell that girl to start doing that right then. It took me I actually went to therapy to learn how to not be a people pleaser because it was so, it was so strong. Some people don't believe me when I tell them that now because I've come a pretty long way, but I spent many years doing what I thought other people expected me to do, trying to like earn love and acceptance and approval. And I feel, now I know who I am, who I want to be, and I can show up as that person even when it's scary. And I just wish that I had done that sooner.
And what were the 3 most important things you had to implement to stop being a people pleaser?
Well, it's one thing. It's psychological flexibility. But if I broke that down to 3 things, that's getting comfortable being uncomfortable. That's not listening to my inner critic, like really choosing. If I listen to this thought, is it going to move me toward the life I want, or is it going to move me away? So like choosing whether to listen to those thoughts rather than just letting them be in charge. And I guess the other part of that would be being clear on my values, who and how I want to be in the world.
I love it. Mandy, bring us home.
Bring us home. Well, I have a final question about, 'tis the season for trade shows, conferences right now. And there's a lot of Gen Zers out there that might be listening to this. I'm curious about your experience with Gen Zers and face-to-face interaction and social anxiety in general. So for those Gen Z professionals right now, or even just human beings that are more introverted, they're hopping on an airplane this week or next week to go to some sort of trade show or conference, or they're going somewhere where they have to interact with people in person.
Yeah.
What are a couple tools that people can pull out of their pocket to disarm that social anxiety a little bit of like, oh my God, I got to interact?
Well, understand that, yes, of course, you're feeling anxious because this matters to you and because you're out of practice, right? We've been living in a world where we're doing less and less of that in-person connecting. So first and foremost, I think self-compassion can be huge here, which is, self-compassion is a construct that has 3 parts. It's recognizing in what way you're suffering. So being clear on the thoughts and feelings you're having that are difficult about this. Common humanity, which is knowing you're not alone. So many people, especially that generation, but lots and lots of people, anyone really who's like lived through COVID and technology, so many people feel this way and it's hard, it's painful. And then self-kindness, like, hey, I'm still getting on the plane. I'm working on it. I am willing to put myself in a situation, even though it's uncomfortable, because this matters to me. And that's a big deal. And, we know research shows that self-compassion is a far better motivator than self-criticism. We know that's the case. So I think that would be my foremost thing is just be gentle and be kind with yourself and know that you're not alone. And then once you're out there, also keep in mind that spotlight syndrome that you have, everyone else has it too. So they're not focusing on you because they're focusing on themselves. And so trying to show up and be in the moment and show up as the me you want to be, whatever that looks like.
So many
Yes.
rad rhymes.
Yes.
I wish I'd have. You have said at least 4 things that have rhymed. One with fear, me, I want to be. I wish I would have written them down. I'm gonna have to re-listen
Yes.
to this. But
Get
What
the
we fear
notes.
is what we hold most dear.
okay,
go.
The
love
me
it.
I want to be.
Yes.
The gap trap.
Yes,
Yep.
gap trap.
Those are the only 3 I remember.
I
So
can't remember
yes,
the other
write
one.
those down, Mandy. Also, we got to give a shout out to Steve Copeland, who's here. Marilyn's in the chat. Chris Musgrave, Laura Wilbur, and Samir. So thank you all for tuning in across the platforms. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Mandy. I just want to say
I
hello.
was gonna say, how could we? Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And how could we support you, Jill? How can we support you moving forward? How can we lift you up? You've supported us in this last hour with some great nuggets.
Well, I would love to share. I actually have a lead magnet that has
Yes.
increased my list quite a bit. And
Yes.
it's actually, so one thing we didn't talk about with the imposter phenomenon is there are 5 subtypes of imposter that are, so like I'm the expert. It's the person that just needs like one more class, one more this, one more that. Then I'll finally feel legitimate. There's the perfectionist, the superhuman, the soloist, the natural genius. And so I have a quiz you can take to find out what your subtype is. And it's essentially what you do to try to not be outed as a fraud, essentially. And so that's just it. My website is jillstoddard.com. So that's where people can find me for all the things. And then it's /quizzes if you want to find out what your imposter subtype is. And then other than that, it's, if you know people that are looking for storytelling experts who bring the science and the sizzle that need some speakers, send them my way.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So for those listening, those watching, Jill Stoddard's website's rolling on the ticker. But if you're listening, it's Jill with 2 L's and Stoddard with 2 D's. And I actually went on there earlier today. And if you click on the little menu, it says quizzes too. So you can just click quizzes and take those too. And I want to take that imposter phenomenon quiz and see where I sit.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we only got through half of my questions, so we're going to have you back so I can get to the other half of my questions, because we want to talk about loneliness.
Interview I do. I have the same problem.
We got to talk about loneliness. We got to talk about narcissism, some other things. So I'll keep my notes here, and we will talk to you again. But thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and just keep in touch. Make sure you support Jill, everyone who's listening and watching, and just keep doing the good work. And we're going to work with you to get you on more stages. So now that we've talked and we've got that, we're on the same train. So just hop aboard with us.
I love it. Thanks for having me, guys. That was a really fun conversation.
Thanks for being here.
Yes, we'll put you back to the green room. Round of applause there. Back to the green room we go. Okay. Mandy.
Yes.
We will see everyone in 2 weeks. In the interim, we'll post up a mini next week which our mini is actually pretty cool. It's a discussion about LinkedIn and best practices. So pay attention to that. Make sure you rate, review on the platform that you're watching or listening to on the show, whatever. And then also share with a friend. Did I miss anything? We're good, right?
No, share with a friend, follow us on other platforms, and watch the mini, because we just recorded this about LinkedIn and I wrote 2 pages of notes down, which is why I didn't write as many notes with Jill, because I ran out of space on my paper. Yeah. So listen to the mini. There's endless LinkedIn tactics on there that I really appreciated you bringing them, Ani.
Cool. Of course. Good to see you, Steve Copeland. Tune in again. And with that, everyone stay safe, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye, everyone.
See you. Bye.